when somebody disagrees with me and they do it thoughtfully, it's kind of a gift, I say, because it allows me to refine my own perspective. And sometimes I'll go back and I'll have the same perspective, but it will be stronger because I'll understand exactly why I believe what I believe. Or maybe there's some cracks in what I'm thinking and I need to adjust it a little bit. So I see that as a gift, and we need that opportunity. And you're not going to get that opportunity if you're only talking to people who absolutely agree with you. So, and I think that's part of the radicalization that we're seeing, where people go further and further into their sort of echo chambers, on the right, on the left, and in multiple disciplines, because they don't have that push and pull that's really necessary to refine ideas and to keep them, sort of sane. So instead, if you're just having people affirming exactly what you believe, you kind of gravitate further and further to some levels of extreme. And I think that is fundamentally a very dangerous thing, and that is what I'm currently seeing in our society, unfortunately.
Well, and James Damore, as you note in the book, sort of observes that that's kind of what happened to Google at an institutional level, having no competition, right? And so, kind of then has the sort of proclivity to get fixated on ideological things as opposed to having to face the needs of the populace, so to speak, or develop the product so that it will actually work for people as opposed to develop the thing they feel like they should be developing. Before we go there, I just want to talk about this, moment where you suddenly became outed as a thought criminal, or that process, how that happened, what you realized.
Yeah, definitely. I think thought criminal is an apt descriptor of this. So there was an inciting incident, and somebody referred to it as my Genesis story, essentially, like a superhero or a supervillain. I don't know yet which one I'll be. And I guess it depends on people's perspectives, how they judge me. But, I basically, I ran a group, and it was for female writers, and they had different offshoots that, dealt with, how to find work, and advice and science writing and arts and business and all sorts of things. And so I decided I did an offshoot. And since it was already a group for women, I had to maintain that. So that group was for female writers and specifically focused on employment opportunities. And we had some mentorship programs within, some resources, and just jobs that we would share within the group. And what happened was, somebody shared a job opening at Fox News, and all hell broke loose, basically. And everybody, people started really attacking her, piling up on this person, and just really were quite savage to this individual. So I, as the person who runs the group, I felt like I had to step in. So I made a post that I thought was pretty neutral. And I just said, let's avoid personal attacks, and let's not have politics in the group, and let's come together instead of how we've been coming apart so much over the last few years. And I thought that was a pretty PC post, but apparently people did not agree with me. So they started, calling me a white supremacist, said that I'd soon let the KKK recruit from my job board, and all sorts of things. And it just really spiraled. And they also said, well, you can't take politics out of a group that's meant for women because that's inherently political. So I said, okay, well then why I don't want politics in here, so I'll open it up to everyone, which I was fine with anyways. But that in particular caused things to really escalate. So it got to the point where people were sending me threats. They were trying to reach out to my employers or past employers to make sure I was unhireable. For example, one of the images that I really recall is mobs with torches. And it just said, we have long memories. Talk about bullying. People downvoted my content. People were attempting to dox me. So it just really spiraled beyond anything I've ever experienced. However, what I was also getting at the same time were also messages of support. And this kind of takes us back to this idea of the silent majority, because a lot of these people were saying, look, I see what's happening to you, and I think it's actually really wrong. But I feel really ashamed because I'm too afraid to speak up. And then on top of it, I was getting a lot of messages from people who were sharing their own stories of how the bullies went after them and they've lost their employment opportunities, they've left their careers, they lost their communities. All of those things were happening, and I was really overwhelmed and by all of that. And I felt like I had two options. I was really at a crossroad. I could go left and I could just remain silent and let this kind of fade away. And I think it would have, to be honest, because I think the mob only has, attention span for a couple of weeks. And the other option was to take a stand. And I took a stand. I wrote a piece for Newsweek. The other thing that was happening, they were writing like little articles on me as well. So it was somewhat prominent, but it wasn't quite in that very, very public sphere at that point. And I was worried that, now I'm making it public and it's probably going to ruin my entire career. And people were warning me not to do it. And the article, while it shared my own story, it was really about how we're heading towards this culture, or already in this culture, of such intolerance towards different ideas, different people, and the importance of having that tolerance and having that dialogue. And I found something within me that I didn't think really existed, like a backbone. And so I published it and waited. It's funny now, I feel so sort of distanced from it, but at the time it was deeply emotional. And as much as I hate using the word, I realize now that it was quite traumatic. I am a bit of a people pleaser, that's in my nature, and I don't like chaos. I don't like conflict and confrontation. Those are probably the things I have the most anxiety about. Now I think I've grown thicker skin, but that piece, it was called something about the virtuous bullies, basically. And I called them bullies, called them out for what they were. And they kind of faded away. And instead, I ended up having a lot of people who came out and really resonated with the piece, people who've shared their own experiences. And I started building sort of a community and also looking into the phenomenon a lot more, even though I was already aware of, what people call cancel culture. I don't think I realized quite the extent, because often we hear certain stories of perseverance. We only hear about celebrities, big stars. We don't really hear about the average person who just has their, 9 to 5 job. And so I felt like writing this book, I really wanted to reach people and empower them so that they understand what the scale of the problem is and why it's important, how it affects every part of our society, be it arts, be it science, be it tech, academia, and also, take away some lessons from those people in terms of what they learned, what their path was. So that was my intention with writing the book.